They said that your boy is just a shell of a boy that he was before. He's not coming back. I hope he's back. I couldn't save my son's death. It wasn't supposed to be this way. He was supposed to graduate from high school this year. You love yourself. You respect yourself. You love life. You have, because it is between or death. This is no joke. You. How do I know this? She tells on thousands of parents nationwide. I wish somebody had sat me down about what fentanyl does. You do.
You know, there's always been one main problem that we make, and it's the reason why we try to keep them as real and as relatable. People just so commonly think that I'm talking about great people, nice people, cool people, intelligent people with big plans for the future, big potential, gone because of one choice they didn't know were in there. Fentanyl is coming for anyone and everyone. More that I can give to kids, to teens, adults, anybody, is the same old message you've heard time and time again. It's serious about not even trying a drug. You see, it first started, I was telling kids not to use drugs because you might get hooked, you might get out. It's not even time. Now it's don't try drugs because you might not wake up tomorrow. You might actually not get another chance. One choice is all it takes. If you don't believe that, at this point, there was someone very similar to you who wished they could be here right now. Look into the camera and look into your eyes and say, don't do it. Please do it. Please, I wish I wouldn't have done it. Don't do it. So my question for you is, are you going to listen? Will it be your family, your friends, holding your hand, wishing they could have been there to tell you?
This is my son Alexander, 10 years old, with fentanyl poisoning.
This is our daughter Jessica. She was 29. She was killed by that.
This is my daughter Alex. She's 20 years old. A drug dealer who sold her a counterfeit pill made of fentanyl. This is my son Daniel Joseph Puerta Johnson, killed at the age of 16.
nice to have one in their picture.
Actually. Don't worry about that. Yes, sir.
Are most of these illicit pills being concrete?
Well, many of them are nowadays, yes, before from Mexico, but unfortunately, we have drug lords now that are infiltrating in these, and they're kind of like supervise them. Believe it or not,
They have the equipment to make
Yeah.
illicit pills?
and I'm sure we have a police officer, sergeant from the North Carolina Police. I'm sure he'll address a lot of this for you, because he's in the hands of this stuff that's happening today.
And the people that drugs, they know that they're killing some of their customers, making money. That's not good business, from,
Well, they're making this stuff, they're not pharmacists, they're not trained to do this, so when they're manufacturing this stuff, it's hit and miss. And it also has to do with, tolerance to the fentanyl drug itself, so kids may be taking fentanyl knowing that they're taking fentanyl, they're fine. They have a little fix, like my grandson, who was just graduating from high school and wasn't taking anything. It was enough to just kill him.
Even addicts who are discharged right now. So it's not just children try it for the first time.
Really trying not necessarily to kill the people, because what they want you to do is just be hooked on it, coming back and coming back and coming back. But because they're not pharmacists, yeah, they're definitely. As I said before, if a plane crashed every day with 3 on board, somebody would be really upset. Want somebody to start doing something about it, but unfortunately, we're dying from this today, as far as overdose goes. She mentioned it's closer to 70 to 75% of all overdoses now are pretty scary. We're going to have one more we'll end the presentation with at the end, but for right now, I wanted to be able to introduce you our guest speaker. It just started this last year, and I was thinking to myself, how bit more effective and more knowledgeable presenting to you. And I saw this article in the Royalton Recorder talked about Mrs. Ohio advocate against addiction. And I thought, wow, this is awesome. Our guest speaker is a wife, a mother, an avid runner, an avid volunteer. She grew up in the suburbs of Cleveland, where she was very quiet, reserved due to anxiety. Anxiety that of her parents struggling with alcoholism. Throughout her childhood, she watched her father increase alcohol intake until it led to numerous health issues. His health continued, and unfortunately, her mother knew no other way but to herself. Our guest stated the fact that she felt helpless as a teenager, source of knowledge to help her parents. So she pursued a degree in biological science in Cincinnati and was accepted to medical school at Ohio University Heritage College of Pediatric Medicine. She graduated in 2019 with a doctorate in osteopathic. Completed began her career as a family medicine physician with the Cleveland Clinic in Twinsburg, Ohio, southeast of Cleveland, looking for an awesome doctor. She now felt confident with her education behind understanding alcohol use, the human body so significantly. But still realize there was a lack of communication, which to me is the key. With the help of her sister, Erica, she founded the Cardinal Crew Foundation, aiming to support families of youth through community events. They just hosted their first 5K run in Sagamore Hills on May 7th. I know I was in attendance. I didn't run, I didn't walk, support them. So crew.org for how to participate in events. In her spare time, she spends as much time as she can with, I don't know how she can, and toddler Logan, and coming that little baby next year. So please help me in welcoming Dr. Stephanie Rose.
Give me 1 second to just put my powder. I think I am going to put
Okay.
just use this photo. Well, thank you for coming out today. This is a really important topic, and I'm really wanting me to come here to share my side of the story. So I hope I can give a little bit different perspective, and then also the perspective of a physician and what I or what would do to help well if you're suffering or if you know somebody suffering from drug addiction. So a little bit about I'm going to go over my background, why it's important to learn about this topic, but I think Tony already nailed that one. How the drugs and alcohol can actually impact your brain and body, recovery and remission and medicine, what doctors can do, different resources, and then a little bit more about the Cardinal community. So I won't go over this because Tony did a really great job. I became a doctor after I watched my parents struggle for many years, and I wanted to know why they were struggling and what was going on in their brain and how to do something to fix them magically. And like you said, this is my family, my husband Justin and my son Logan, and yes, I'm carrying another one here. So, four of us. And I am currently our Mrs. Ohio American for about 1 more week. This mattered to me so much. Up top right, that's my dad, Tom. He unfortunately passed away 1 year ago on June 17th of 2022 from his addiction. You can see this picture here. This is him 5 years ago. 5 years ago, just the way his body looks from that top picture, which was of several months before he died. That's what addiction can do to you. It can severely change your physical aspects of you in addition to your mental health. Just over that course of 5, he went from one to the other. And so his struggle actually began about +years ago. He struggled a lot with his mental health, just anxiety, and his way of coping was with alcohol. And when he first started drinking, that this was going to be a problem, and he was going to be turning this into an addiction. He just thought from that. And then just having some beers today turned into let's have, a 24 pack of Miller Lite every single day. It's a lot of beer. Never thought this was going to happen. But 20 years later, it was still happening. It affected him and affected the family as a whole. Because me and my sisters were growing up, we had no idea what was going on or why this was happening. We just saw the after effects and angry. He would come home screaming at us for no reason. And we just didn't, we were just kids. And like I said, his health down and down really rapidly in 5 years because of this long-term addiction. About 7 months prior to his death, that he actually, his heart on my front porch, he was coming to visit me, and I just heard my dogs barking, and thankfully I was a doctor, so I knew what to do. My mom was with me what was going on, because a lot of times if you're not exposed to healthcare and you just see someone lying on is to freak out. That is very normal. So here's my mom screaming over my house and my dad laying unconscious on the floor. And so I had to actually, my son, I was 34 weeks pregnant, so I actually had to drag my dad's body to get him into a position to start CPR because he had no heartbeat. And then he actually made it out of that. It was kind of miraculous. I really didn't think that was going to happen. 7 months later, he had a fall that was the end of his life. Me and my sister for about 5 days as he was on life support because he had taken a fall brain bleed that was just not recoverable. We would have ended life support. My mom, who is also pictured here, she was 5 floors up as she was in alcohol withdrawal because she had been struck for the past 5 years or so because she just didn't know what else to do with my dad together drinking alcohol because they became drinking buddies, honestly. Why this matters to me so much. I've seen it firsthand what it can do to a family, can strengthen family. Me and my sister have probably never been closer after having to undergo this whole ordeal with our parents. So definitely is a very important cause here for today. So why should you keep their own story as family members or loved ones that they may have known that have experienced something similar to this? Well, we saw in that Dead on Arrival video all of those people holding those photos. These people that you see here on this slide are people from North. These are people from Macedonia area that graduated around, and I'm not that old. So put that into perspective. These are all I went to school with just 10 years ago that have all died because of drug overdose. The people that I sat in school with, Dave Kajansky, he was one of the nicest kids I'd ever known in high school, always looking to do something for somebody. Same thing with Kristen here. None of these people on this slide doing things with their lives thought that they were going to take one drug one day and die. And so this goes to show you that this could be any one of you out there, any one of your children. Nobody expects it to be them until it is. And so this just a little visual representation. This is from 2021, so slightly outdated at this point, but I can show you the general trends here of drug deaths. And then with the, you can see that the middle blue color is steadily rising. And I bet you if we added 2023 on this list, it would just keep going. And that is a lot of people dying from fentanyl and other drugs. So opioid overdose deaths are responsible for 10% of all the drug deaths worldwide. And then in the US, deaths more than doubled from 25,000 to 50,000 13 in 2020. So the numbers are just steadily increasing. And one big important point here is that overdose can happen with any drug, even if you only just used it one time. That's all. So let's talk a little bit about how drugs for the first time. They don't really think about the long-term alcohol use. They just think, oh, we're just going to have some fun right now. But drugs lasting impact on the brain. There's this short video because I'm such a visual learner myself, and I have videos kind of show you better than I can tell you what's going on in the brain. So this 2 minutes here, so I'm gonna get this started.
Disorder that affects the reward system in the brain. In a healthy person, the reward system reinforces important behaviors, including sex and social interaction. For example, because you know that after eating, you will feel good. In other words, the activity of eating pleasurable and memorable, so you would want to do it again and again when hijack natural needs into drug needs. It consists of billions of neurons or nerve cells which communicate via chemical. When a neuron is sufficiently stimulated, an electrical impulse called an action potential and travels down the axon to the nerve terminal. Here it triggers the release of a neurotransmitter generating a signaling, thereby transmitting that neuron. Pathways involve transmission of the neural from the ventral tegmental area, the VGA, of the midbrain to the limbic system and the frontal cortex. Engaging in enjoyable activities generates action potentials in dopamine. This causes dopamine release from the neurons into the synaptic space to stimulate dopamine receptor on the receiving neuron. This is believed to produce the pleasurable feelings or rewarding effects. Dopamine molecules are then removed from the synaptic space and transported back into the transmitting neuron by a special protein called dopamine transporter. Most drugs of abuse increase the level of dopamine in a reward pathway. Some drugs such as alcohol, heroin, and nicotine indirectly excite the dopamine-producing neurons in the VGA so that they generate more action potentials. Cocaine acts at the nerve terminal. It binds to dopamine transporter and blocks the reuptake of dopamine. Methamphetamine, a psychostimulant, acts similarly to cocaine in blocking dopamine. In addition, it can enter the neuron into the dopamine-containing vesicles, where it triggers dopamine release even in the absence of action potentials. Different drugs act in different ways, but the common outcome is that dopamine builds up in the synapse to a much greater amount than normal. This causes a continuous stimulation, maybe overstimulation of receiving neurons, and is responsible for prolonged and intense euphoria experienced by drug users. Repeated exposure to dopamine surges caused by drugs eventually desensitizes the reward system. It is no longer responsive to everyday stimuli. The only thing that is how drugs change the person's life priority. After some time, even the drug to reward, and higher doses are required to achieve the rewarding effect. This ultimately leads
So just to summarize, a lot of the drug addiction is surrounding dopamine. So dopamine is the neurotransmitter in the brain that gives work effects. So dopamine isn't bad. We actually secrete dopamine with daily activities. Honestly, listening to a baby laugh, you probably get a little there. Going to Cedar Point, there's a lot of dopamine there as well. But what happens is that drugs and alcohol, they secrete so much dopamine that going to Cedar Point now, that's not enough. You will never get the same amount of dopamine to be released, to get that fun feeling. You're going to constantly look for that one thing that gives you that dopamine surge. And that ends up, unfortunately, being drugs for the people who have experimented or started using them. So a lot of times there's a recurring staging cycle. So if you end up being that person who experiments with drugs, that one time, but you get that dopamine surge, so you want more, that's when you start getting and walking and towing the line of actual addiction and continuously needing that drug. So people go through these different stages where they binge on drugs, they get the intoxicated feeling, that euphoria. And then you can read here, we'll go into too many details of the different chemicals that can be released. But what happens then with the withdrawal is that dopamine, you're not getting that release anymore, and the dopamine goes away, and that's when those withdrawal effects come into play. Different drugs and then alcohol, they each have their own kind of withdrawal-like symptoms, similar across the board, but still a little bit different. Can come with extreme settings of anxiety, sweating, nausea, vomiting, headaches, those kinds of things. And then once that withdrawal wears off, you're not inundated by all of those bad symptoms. So what do? You start craving that drug again, that alcohol again, and then you go through this cycle. So I wanted to talk a little bit about recovery and why it can be so hard to achieve for some people. And there's not a lot that's understood about recovery and how best to help it. A lot of it goes back to these dopamine effects and how can we kind of infiltrate that system to rewire and rework our brain. So our brain has to be reset. We have to relearn what a normal dopamine level is, what a normal response is, so that when we do go back to your point, we can have fun and have that response to dopamine as we should. This is done over a long period of time. That's why for those who are in recovery, they have to be very persistent with it, especially in the beginning, because it's easy to backslide, because resetting dopamine in that pathway just takes a long time. Once your brain can finally determine that normal response, they will hopefully forget that dopamine response that they had from the drugs. That pathway is still going to be there. However, think of it as kind of like a pathway in the woods that has just been thrown over by so much weeds and other debris that you can't really find it as easily. So it's still there, but more easily to forget at that point. So what can I do as a physician to help people who are struggling or were concerned about struggling? This is not going to be on the slide. I just wanted to take it aside. I have to think about why drug addiction starts. Why do people want to start experimenting with drugs in the first place? For a lot of people it is, I'm just young and it sounds cool, I'm going to do that. But for a good portion of people, it actually goes back to kind of what my dad experienced. And he was very depressed, had anxiety, had obsessive compulsive disorder, and he worked night shift. And so he didn't get the normal day-to-day stimuli. And so that's what caused a lot of his depression. So what did he do when he was depressed? He wanted to find that dopamine, and then he found that alcohol was giving him just that. So what I've learned as a physician after talking to so many patients who are struggling with this as well, there is something that people are trying to cope with or forget, whether it be a past trauma or a mental health disorder that they want to medicate, and they do it on their own with drugs or alcohol. So when I see a patient, we have to determine if, this is a substance use disorder or, the one kind of thing. So what is substance use disorder? That is when we use any kind of substance more than we should. And there are criteria to define this. So I'll go through these a little quickly here. So by definition, have substance use disorder, you have a person who is taking that substance in larger amounts over a longer period of time than was originally intended. There's a persistent desire, or there are unsuccessful efforts to cut down on using the substance. There's a great deal of time spent trying to obtain the substance or recover from its effects. You have a strong craving or desire to use the substance. Recurrent substance use results in failure to fulfill major roles or obligations at work, home, school, or anything else that you're supposed to be doing. Continued substance use despite having persistent or recurrent social or interpersonal problems, so think family issues, friends issues. Important social, occupational, recreational activities are given up or reduced because of alcohol use or substance use. Substance use in situations that are potentially hazardous, so think about using substances while driving would fall under that. Use is continued despite the knowledge of the physical or harmful effects that substance can have on you. If somebody builds up a tolerance or a person experiences withdrawal because of the substance. So we then define how bad is it, I suppose. I mean, it's but mild disorder, you have 2 or 3 of those criteria are met. And then if that's the case, built based off of different psychosocial and therapeutic. Whereas moderate to severe disorder, when you hit at least 4 to 5 criteria for moderate use disorder, 6 plus criteria for severe use disorder, we typically like to treat with at that point, in addition to different therapeutic settings. So what does therapy look like? There's actually like a different for every single person going through. And it's nice to know that there are different options, because if one doesn't, let's try another one, let's not give up right away. So there's things that I can do in the normal doctor's visit. You just come in and we can kind of do this thing called motivational interviewing, which is essentially assessing where are you right now. Change? Do you want to change? What steps are you willing to take to get there? And then if we have this discussion, it's finding the appropriate place for you to go to get the steps taken care of that you're ready to take. There's something called cognitive behavioral therapy. This is typically done with a psychologist, a counselor, or a therapist, where they actually learn how the patient themselves learns their thought process and why are they making the decisions that they're doing. It increases their awareness for the situation around them. There are mutual help groups out there, so these ones are the typical ones that you probably think of in the community. Alcoholics Anonymous, Narcotics Anonymous, Al-Anon for those who are family members, helping their family members go through their addiction. And then it also goes up to different types of residential treatments. And this could be a facility where you are living there 24/7, and the times for how long you're in these residential treatment plans varies. It can be 30 days. Typically, there are some that are even like 9 months to over a year long too, depending on for that particular person. There are also intense tasks. So if they do have a job that they've managed to keep, go to their job during the day and attend outpatient therapy programs every day during the week to get the appropriate therapy that they need. There are a lot of medications that can help too, to help prevent recurrence or help to people off of their drug of choice, so to speak. To give you a brief overview of what you need to know somebody offered. Picking medications for people is a very intricate process. It has a bunch of different things going on, so not all medications are right for everyone. So for medications here, naltrexone. This is not the melodic Narcan. This is something a little bit different. So naltrexone, the mainstay of treatment right now for alcohol use disorder in the outpatient setting, once a day, and it helps to reduce, because people then know, well, if I just don't take the pill, I can just drink a beer instead. So It's a very common thing that happens. So what they've made these days are these long-acting injectable medications. That's where this Vivitrol is. It is so, which is that top medication there, but it's an injectable form that lasts 90 days. You go to a physician's office, you get the injection, and it can cover you for 90 days. You don't have to think about, am I going to take my, I'm just going to go buy that six-pack up the street. And then, because like I said, we need options when there's medications, because not everybody can take naltrexone. There are some caveats there, mostly for people with liver damage and suffering from alcoholism. Liver damage is one of the problems that can occur after long time use. So if that's the case, then we use this one day. So it does options there. That's kind of the point of this slide here. I want to point out is that if you are some other condition that you're facing, so like liver disease, there's another option. If you are pregnant, you can use these medications, because at the end of the day, what would be more would it be drinking a 12-pack of Bud Light, or would it be taking medication? It's more harmful to be drinking all that alcohol, so these medications are safer. And another good thing to point out is somebody's also suffering from an opioid use disorder, or opioids for some other condition they're being treated for. You cannot take naloxone, and yes, naloxone is what is in Narcan. That's a combination called Suboxone, and these can be very helpful for patients who have suffered from opioid use disorder. Essentially, both collectively, they help suppress withdrawal symptoms, cravings, and blocks opioid effects over time. And because these medications are so very well controlled, these are obviously better than continuing to use things that you can find on the streets. Because as we've already learned, just because you think you're getting oxycodone, you might be getting that fentanyl, and you could kill yourself with those street drugs, whereas these are prescribed by your physician, and they are controlled, so we know how much, how often you are getting these medications. Something to note about those two, I don't expect you to read this, this is just to give you an example of how many are out there, but those medications, Suboxone, methadone, they have to be prescribed by specific doctors who have gone through special certifications for them. I am not one of them, but there are a lot of them. They can be found on the internet. There's a great resource. It's that SAMHSA is the name up there, and I have actual links to those things. We have some handouts in the back too. But essentially, you just go to this website, type in your zip code, and it will pop up all these doctors who are certified in prescribing these medications. So there are a lot. This is just in the 44133 within 10-mile radius, just to give you an idea. There is a lot.
Can I just say, as I'm Amber, I'm an alcoholic and an addict. I will be for my entire life. It will never go away. I'll have to constantly keep up that addict on a daily basis, staying in contact with a higher power. So, Suboxone can be abused, and it has been abused. And people go to the doctor, as long as you have it in your system, when you go there, you'll get your prescription. I know people who sell it and sold it to other people. It's gotten prisons. So it is a drug that is abused as well. I just wanted to.
Thank you. That is actually very helpful, because from my side of things, we don't hear about that as much or as often. Sometimes we wear our rose-colored glasses and think it's all peachy keen, but that's a good point. Thank you.
Methadone is controlled a lot better because it's on a daily basis and have to go to get it, but Suboxone is a prescription.
Thank you. Yes.
Are these programs free, or do you have to have insurance to?
It varies. There are a lot of financial assistance programs for these kinds of programs. You might have to look into the specific provider who is prescribing them to know exactly what kind of financial assistance programs that they
There is
have.
not a lot that even your insurance will cover. I went through it.
Did you?
Yep.
That's,
I just want to add for these people here is a foster parent. Check with job, family, and child care kid, because they're actually going to be the people who have information. The services that are free to not.
yeah, that is one of the biggest problems that we actually face with all of addiction recovery, to be honest, is the financial constraints that it places on people. When we were looking into different rehab facilities for my mom, she did not have insurance because she had been without a job for so long because of her substance use. And my goodness, we were up against a lot. It took us a lot of time and research to find different recovery facilities that would take her because of no insurance. If you go to one of those, nice rehab facilities that people all want you to think that are out there, those are $40,000 at least, so they are expensive. And that's something that we found while helping, trying to help my mom. And that's part of the reason that we've made we're still kind of up and coming, but we created this nonprofit organization to kind of help with the financial constraints for people. Again, we're still in the beginning phases, so one day I hope that we can actually provide more financial assistance to people who are struggling like this. Well, I'll talk a little bit more, a couple minutes here about what we do have right now, but I think you made a really good point. Insurance is not great, coverage is not great, health is not great, and that's part of the problem. Did want to touch on Narcan really quickly too, just to kind of make sure everybody knew what this was. So naloxone or Narcan, this is something that you can have at home, or first responders have this as well. So if you do take a drug and you overdose on this drug, if you are found soon enough, there's a chance you can use naloxone, Narcan, to help revive you. It usually comes, there's a couple different formulations, but there is a nasal spray that they spray, and it delivers this medication, and essentially it goes in and displaces the drug. So if it's got fentanyl, and the fentanyl is attacking those opioid receptors in your body, the naloxone comes in, knocks off that fentanyl, and kind of puts you into a withdrawal period, so you're not going to die from fentanyl or other opioids. And this dose can be repeated. They also have injections where you can give it in like the, kind of like, if you've ever seen an EpiPen be used, that kind of thing. So how do you get Narcan training, or how can you get Narcan? There's a couple different ways right now. There's something called the Ohio Project Dawn, which actually offers trainings for Narcan and how to administer it. There's a link here that shows you where to go to get that training. You can also order Narcan online, and it's safe and effective. It's not like you're buying drugs off the street kind of thing. It's done by the government, so they'll send you Narcan as well. Soon, I can't give you a date, you will be able to actually get Narcan over the counter too. So there's definitely many different ways to access this. So if you do have a loved one who is suffering, you're going through all these medications and therapies and trying to get them on a good path, if they're still struggling, it's not a bad idea to have Narcan available in your home. So if you find your family member soon enough, you can get that administered to them. So different community resources that are free are Alcoholics Anonymous. Again, I don't expect you to read all through this, but it's just to give you an idea that these are just Monday night ones. So these meetings are happening all over the place all the time. And there are some virtual options. In the resources I have a chart with this, so you don't have to memorize this or write anything down. And you can also find this information online with just find AA meetings in your area. You type in your zip code and it will populate all of these for you. Same thing with Narcotics Anonymous. So if you're struggling with opioids, this group might be a little bit better for you. Same thing, go to na.org and they will get you the list of all the places that can help you there. For those who are family members struggling with a family member with addiction, so for example, me, just to have support of other family members who are going through the same thing. These are also meetings found at the Cleveland Al-Anon website, which is included in those information sheets there. And then I did want to talk about the Cardinal Crew Foundation, which my sister and I have co-founded here. The whole point was because we realized that the resources were lacking. And one of the things that kind of goes back to what Tony was saying, the natural highs, right? We want to experience natural highs instead of drugs and alcohol highs. So our aim is to actually support families affected by drug and alcohol addiction by hosting different community events to get people out into the community, find people who have struggled with similar things, get people talking and learning from each other, because that's how I think we learn best and we can find new ways to help others. So some of the things that we've done, we'd like to look at community, figure out the resources, and we're going to start providing. So some community events, we just did our first 5K in Sagamore Hills. That Tony, he was there, I witnessed it. He did walk a little bit.
From the car.
He was there. This August, we'll actually be hosting an end of summer celebration in Medina Square, the whole place there. We're gonna have food, raffles, yard games like Giant, Jenga, and Connect 4, and different cornhole, those kinds of things, that just to get outside and enjoy a really nice day and see the different support of the community there. We did a Christmas raffle this past year, which we do virtually. Essentially, you buy raffle tickets for some really cool prizes that have been donated by the community. All of these events are hosted to raise money to help fund the scholarships that we'll be providing. The end of summer celebration, just an FYI, it's free to attend. You just kind of show up and there are different things that you can participate in there. So this scholarship, so growing up, my dad, who was struggling with addiction, finances were tight because all of his money was typically going to alcohol. He told me not to go to college because it was a waste of time. I'm glad I did not listen to him because I wouldn't be standing here before you today. But paying for my college, I mean, I didn't. I have a lot of debt because I did not pay for anything yet. But it was hard, and that was something that I had to look at while I was growing up. Is it going to be worth the financial constraints I was facing? My older sister, who lives in Florida, she actually stopped going to college for a little bit because she actually listened to what he said and didn't think it was going to be worth it. So our goal, as we continue to build this foundation, is to provide scholarships, differing amounts as we kind of go through the processes here, but to help those people who are struggling. Now, these scholarships can be used for a wide variety of things, whether it be to get a college education, whether it's going to be to fund something fun for personal development. So what if you play guitar and you're musically inclined, possibly use it for music lessons to help get you started in that perspective. It could also be used if you have a family member who's struggling and you need extra finances to pay for medications and different therapies. That would be
Al-Anon for my daughter. I just didn't feel like I had a connection with them because it was all about them. I did find out there's Family Anonymous.
Yes.
And that was so much better for me, because that was parents and husbands and wives that had people. So I felt that Family Anonymous was better. There's not that many of them, but they are very, very geared toward that.
thank you. I'll have to ask. That was not something.
And it was just really, really, much. There's another one that people don't know about, but adult children of alcoholics.
Okay.
Do have meetings. It's similar to the POSAP program, but it's for children that were, had alcoholic parents, but it also
contributes to people who have addiction as well at the same time.
That's great too, I'll write that one down as well.
Are some of these like that, that one that Tony showed earlier, arrival, are they being shown in schools to kind of let kids know?
Yeah, I've actually been trying, to get into, Medina High School where I'm a security officer, as well as North Royalton, but, so far I've had no luck with. They said that I could get into the health classes, but unfortunately, I have not had any response back from them.
I have one more quick question for you.
Yeah.
My daughter's she's an addict, and she was 6.5 years sober, and then she relapsed. And she went to the doctors. Can you tell me why they give gabapentin?
Yeah.
Because she is now abusing gabapentin. She's taking it, 3 of them 3 times a day, and then going to the streets to get more. So she's not
Used as a antidepressant in the past because it can help modulate some of those pathways. Gabapentin is a controlled substance, so
Right.
that is monitored and tracked. So it's usually it's not one of the first line therapies. So it's possible that she was kind of going through different medications.
She has every excuse in the world why she needs it,
Right.
but she doesn't need it. You know, I really, in my, she went through, I don't know,